Come get the tea from me. LVB.
Hey, and welcome back to What's the Gossip? And today I'm joined by Britain's first transgendered newsreader and professional troublemaker, India Willoughby. So India, you're Britain's first transgendered newsreader, and you're also the first transgendered co-host of Loose Women. Like, that's quite an accolade to have, isn't it? To be like the first in the world.
It is, you know, I'm sort of proud of it. Well, I am actually proud of it, but it's sort of changed so much. So I don't bang on about it. And I've sort of dropped the word because that whole thing, the transgender thing, it's just changed so much from what it used to mean to what it now means, that it's actually a handicap. So while I'm proud of doing that breakthrough and being, as far as I'm aware, you know, the first one in the world actually, to actually read the national news, at the moment, given the climate that we live in, it's quite damaging to your career. So I don't make a big song and dance about it. I just want to be treated as me, if that makes sense, which is a shame. I should be able to be proud about it, and I should be able to make a bit of a song and dance, but I can't, or at least I don't feel I can.
Do you feel like because you're the first one, it applies more pressure to you because you have to give the most PC and generic answers to everything to please everyone around you?
Do you know what, Leigh? You've hit the nail on the head. I was totally unaware what it was going to be like when I first went on Loose Women, and then I joined Channel 5. But I quickly learned that rather than just, you know, telling the world who I was and getting on with my life, in many ways I was expected to be a spokesperson for trans and LGBT. And I'm just being honest, you know, I know nothing about LGBT. I'm not an activist. I don't feel obliged to sort of know the history or to bang any drum or anything like that. And it's also really difficult because, I mean, you probably know this as well from, you know, your own situation and people that you know. There is no one, like what the LGBT world say, there is no one trans take on how things should actually be. And I'm actually within the trans world now. I'm so outnumbered by like gender non-binary people and all these new things that have come in, 1,000 different genders and people being unicorns and being Bob on a Monday and Barbara on a Wednesday. I'm sort of outnumbered. So I can't really advocate for any of that because it's not who I am. It's not what I understand. Does that make sense?
Do you feel like because you were the first, do you feel like if you were to missay something that they could then run with that going, well, she did actually say we could do this, so let's go with this? Was that the extra pressure that you felt?
Absolutely. And whenever I open my mouth on telly on this subject, I get it from both sides. I get trans people going ballistic at me saying, that's not how it is, blah, 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 blah. But then I get the haters as well, who just class trans en masse. You know, we're all the same to them, regardless of whether you're, you know, transitioning or you're Eddie Izzard or you're something in between and you go by the pronoun they or they or whatever. It's just trans to them. And as I said with that first reply, what is the answer? If I said to you, even trans people disagree, what is a typical trans person? See, to me growing up, I'm you know, to me, trans is just the word. The clue is in the word that you're going to transition. You're going from one bit to another, and it's a one-way ticket. And when you get there, that's it over and done with. You sort of get on with your life. Whereas now, you know, it's completely different. So yeah, whenever I open my mouth on the subject, I upset everybody, but that's fine.
Do you feel like people expect you to be an expert on the topic, even though you're technically just learning as you go along yourself?
Well, I would say actually, Leigh, I am an expert on the subject in the sense of if somebody wants to transition, I'm an expert. I know all about that. What I haven't the foggiest about, and I don't think the general public have the foggiest idea what it's all about either, and this is why I have so many mainstream followers. If you go on my social media account, I don't have many people from the LGBT world. that follow me, but I've got 50,000 followers on Twitter, and they're nearly all, they're just a mix of normal people. And what they struggle as much as I do to understand what trans is now. So to answer your question, I would say I am an expert on trans, the old definition, but the new breed would disagree.
So the new breed technically have to be campaigners. They have to be...
Well, yeah, they tend to be sort of people with blue hair and nose rings, and they actively don't want to transition. You know, that is, they definitely don't want that.
You just want to be a female newsreader.
I just want to go on with my life. Yeah, I'm done and dusted. And as far as I'm concerned, and this, you know, I'm not just speaking for myself here. All the people in my situation actually cross over fully and permanently. You know, once it's done, and you get on with your life. Whereas now, it's almost become a permanent state of being. I think that's the best way to describe it. You know, trans, again, transitionary. If you're in a transitionary stage in anything, it's a sort of in between period of your life. But then all transitions, wherever they are, whether it's Brexit or wherever, they all eventually come to an end, and you end up in a settled state. And that's how it has always been, you know, for trans people. Whereas now you have this mass, this big majority of people who actually want to stay permanently in this middle floaty about area. And, you know, good luck to them. My only beef is that obviously it gets a bit awkward when we're all sharing the same word. And I would say that we were here first.
You're all different flavors of the same thing.
Yeah, but we all hate each other. I'm just being honest. It makes it really difficult. It makes it really difficult because if I meet somebody and, you know, that they know that you're trans, then they think, well, what type of trans? And you then have to go into a half an hour conversation. And it shouldn't be like that.
So because you're a trans woman, I assume you've always, in your mind, been India. When did you decide to make the change, to take the leap?
It wasn't me who chose it to do it, really. I just had no choice. That's just how it was. And, you know, I fought it all my life, and it just got to a stage where I just had to do it and get it done. So that was about 10 years ago now. But brilliant, you know, best thing I ever did.
What was it like when you told the first person that this is what you wanted to do? Was it a friend, or was it a relative? Was it a family member?
Yeah, it was. I made a big email of all the people that I was going to tell. And obviously you put the people you want support from near the top. So that was family members and then friends. And it was a good reaction. So yeah, I've been lucky in that respect.
So you mentioned on your platform, it's mostly the general public, not the LGBTQ plus community. I assume that's because... Yeah,
it bores me to death. I'm totally alien to the LGBT world. Bores me to death. All the ranting and, you know, the pronouns and the little infighting. I think it's a complete myth. You know, this thing, they talk about the LGBT community, and I don't think that's really true. I think it's the one exception. I think for gay guys, it's really good. LGBT, you know, there's lots of stuff going on. There's pride, and there's also those sort of things that you buy into. But everyone else, we hate each other. It's as simple as that.
I was gonna say, because when I met you at that Halloween like horror fun fair thing,
wasn't that a good night?
That was a good thing. I wasn't actually familiar with who you were, and I only followed you because I enjoyed talking to you. So there was no oh, what are you? You know, tell me all this. We were talking, and I had a better time with you than the guy I was on a date with.
Great.
That was the worst. Oh my God. But yeah, that night was so fun, wasn't it?
I love it. They put on great events. We're talking about, is it called Shocktober?
The Tilly's Shocktober Farm or something, Tilly's Farm or something.
Is it Tully's or Tilly's? One of the two. Anyway, way down south, and way down south, it's about an hour south of London, isn't it? Or something like that. And it's like a big outdoor park, and you have like zombies chasing you around in a mental asylum. And spooks and good. Oh, it's just fantastic. I love that every night. It's one of my favourite nights. Leigh.
What was scarier, the guy with the chainsaw or Kerry Katona's 15 kids?
Ow! Yeah, I'm going to say the chainsaw because I don't want to get abused on Twitter. So yeah, the chainsaw.
You know, when we were going around the mazes and they were chasing you with
Yeah.
like the knives, I was literally like, oh yes, yes, very exciting, yeah, yeah. And they're like, trying to get a reaction out of you. And I was thinking, they're not allowed to touch us anyway. So we're just walking through all these shops, everyone around me screaming, oh, but the free bar.
The free bar was great, wasn't it? Rag and Bone Man, I spotted him. Did you see him?
No, I didn't see
He
it.
was there. And obviously there was Kerry with her kids.
All of them.
And there were lots of reality TV people there, but they all take. I've noticed as well that reality TV people as well, they now take a ring light with them, to stick on their camera phones, and some that actually had proper cameras that they're thing. Wow, that is hard work. I mean, I
That's
know I've
too
done a
much.
reality show, but that's committed, isn't it?
I was I was there on a date and the guy kept lingering round. Do you remember there was free Greg sausage rolls?
Oh, lovely.
We turned up at the train station to go to this thing and he turned up plastered and I was like, oh no, and I'm staying with him as well. I was like, oh God. So the whole way going around this thing, I was like, I want to leave. And I was thinking, I don't even know where in London I am. So I was like, okay, I'm stuck with you now.
Was that a first date, Leigh?
The second one, so he was obviously very comfortable because he turned up plastered thinking I was amused. And I was like, why are you doing this to me? What is this? But yeah,
did anything come out of it?
I legged it in the morning.
Mm.
I skidded on a pizza box on the way out of his house.
Class.
It's not for me, India. It's not for me.
Well, let's hope we get back to that.
What, me skidding on a pizza box?
Nights out. I'm really missing it. I know they've just announced today, on the day that we're recording this, Boris has come out with his plan for coming out. Just seems still a long stretch to me. And what do you think, Leigh? We're still talking about 2 or 3 months.
I just hope that whatever he's saying is a matter of fact at this point, because I manage well indoors. I always keep myself busy, but I think I feel for people that need stimulation from constantly talking to people, and a lot of people are isolated. And I genuinely think that this needs to come to an end one way or another. I know it's a pandemic and there's not much you could do about it, but I think what he's saying today, which was, I think it was 2 months time, we can go sit in a park.
That's right.
Nightclubs is June, isn't it?
Yeah, if there are any left.
So we've got 4 months now to get skinny.
Well, this is true, yeah.
So what are you looking forward to the most when you get out of this?
Oh, just normality. I haven't seen, well, first of all, I haven't seen my mum since before Christmas. So I'm really missing her. And just generally getting about and socialising. My best friend in London is the guy who works for Channel 5, one of the news producers, but he's a Kiwi, New Zealand. So he wisely, with hindsight, he jumped on a plane and he went back to New Zealand. And I don't know if you know, New Zealand's been virtually free. They've had a little bit, but nowhere near as bad as we have. But he said when he arrived, what happens when you arrive in New Zealand, you're actually met by armed guards. So you come off the plane, they then march you into this holding area. Everybody has a COVID test then and there. And then you're taken to this hotel, which has wire fences around you. Again, like a zombie film, to keep you in. And then everybody's taken to their individual hotel room where they're going to stay. And he said he woke up the first morning and he was having a bit of a stretch. He thought, I'll just have a bit of a wander down the courtyard, in the hotel foyer. So he opened his hotel room door on the second floor and he took one step out and there was this guard there with a gun saying, what are you doing? Get back in your room, get back in your room. And it was literally hardcore lockdown. They were allowed out 1 hour a day and they all had to come out together, but they had to walk, like in the prisons when you see them walking around the compound. So they had to all walk at the same pace around this square 4 or 5 times. And he said it was like being a criminal. And then it got to the stage where people were turning up on the outside. And because this was such an unusual sight, they were actually just lining up outside the wire cage, taking pics of them like they were animals.
Don't cough over the fence.
Don't cough over the bed. But he said the food was really bad. He was hoping somebody would lob him a banana like they do at the monkey compound, but nobody did, sadly.
Is being in lockdown similar to being in the Celebrity Big Brother house?
It's harder. Celebrity Big Brother was Celebrity Big Brother, that's a tough question to answer. Celebrity Big Brother was tough. Make no bones about it. I still hold to the fact, I honestly think it's the toughest reality show in the world still to this day. But I think lockdown, certainly the second one, I don't know about you, Leigh. The first one was a breeze and I really enjoyed it. And it was just like chilling and like lots of fresh stuff on Netflix and all that. And I just thought it was a bit of a holiday. Whereas this one has been a hard grind. Horrible. But the tough thing, getting back to Celebrity Big Brother, is obviously that you're in a house with 16 people who've been deliberately selected to wind you up. And there's no escape. There's no newspapers, there's no TV, there's no radio. You're not allowed a pencil. You have to engage with them, which is horrible.
So looking back, would you talk yourself out of doing it, or what would you do differently if you could go back in?
Oh, no. I love doing it. It was just that I was in with a ropey bunch, to be honest. But yeah, I love doing it. I'm a massive reality TV fan, especially Celebrity Big Brother. So to get the invite to go in was a dream come true. And it's really good. Yeah, I know you've had Mark Byron on, who did Big Brother in a previous year. I think he did it 2 or 3 years before me, the civilian version. But the Big Brother world, honestly, you make so many friends.
Yeah.
And all around the world as well, that have actually done the show, and you get to know, and there's occasional meetups and what have you. I went to the year after I did Celebrity Big Brother in 2018, I was on holiday in Spain, and these 2 Chinese people came over and they said, I won't do it. I won't do the accent because I'm terrible. But they said, are you India from Celebrity Big Brother house? I was saying, yeah. And I was thinking, how do you know that? But it's because it's such a big program, Big Brother. It's in like 40 different territories, and a lot of the cable stations around the world, they replay the seasons, as it goes on. So it was great. Brilliant thing to do.
You had a bit of an altercation in the house where people kept misgendering you, and people took offense to the fact that you wouldn't accept an apology, which personally I find rude because it's only your apology to accept. How did that feel, having to defend yourself with your decision on that part?
Yeah, well, I stand by what I said at the time. And actually, if you look back at that footage now, that season, I don't think they would ever show it again in the UK because it's just so bad. It's aged terribly. I mean, that's what, in 2018, so that's 3 years ago. I mean, 3 years ago, it was acceptable to go on TV and misgender someone.
I think if they did that on a current season of Big Brother, they'd be removed from the house.
Yeah, well, the funny thing was, when it happened to me, you've just described it perfectly. I'll tell you the story. I mean, how it worked was that the year that I went in, every year has a different theme to it. So sometimes it's secrets and lies was one in the past, but this particular year was billed as Year of the Woman. So there was loads of pre-publicity in all the glossy magazines about who was rumoured to be going in, and they knew, so they had a full list. Everybody knew who was going in. So on the night of Year of the Woman season, all the women were going in first, and obviously I was there on that night. I went in, and within 10 minutes, the likes of Rachel Johnson and Anne Widdecombe, they were the ringleaders, really. They were just misgendering me. And I was thinking, well, why are you doing that when it's Year of the Woman? You know what this season is all about. So to start with, I sort of let it go, which I shouldn't have even let it go for 10 minutes. But then after 10 minutes, I thought, well, don't want to kick up a fuss on the first day, just politely explain why that bothers me a little bit. And would you mind just referring to me correctly? And they sort of nodded, but I could tell it hadn't gone through, and it carried on. And then the 100th time it happened, which was on day 2, I just snapped. It's a bit like somebody saying, would you like a cup of tea? And the first time you say, oh, no, thanks, that's fine. And then they ask you, are you sure you don't want a cup of tea? And the second time you say, look, it's okay. But if something happens 100 times, then eventually you go ballistic. And to me, it was a big principle. But it was interesting that 3 years ago, I was actually portrayed on social media and in the mainstream press. I was portrayed as the baddie for kicking up a stink about being misgendered. I was the baddie. It wasn't the other way around. The people doing the bullying were innocent. They were the victims. Whereas now, rightly, as you've just said, Leigh, I think if that happened now on a reality show, hopefully, I would keep my fingers crossed, people would have a better understanding. And just as, if you were talking about race, if there was something that's sensitive to people racially, you wouldn't go on a big show and use those terms that would upset someone in a race sense, or a sexuality, if there were words, such as faggot, for instance, which you knew were offensive to gay men, you wouldn't go on a reality show and start using faggot, because your world would cave in, everyone would come and get you. But at that time, 3 years ago, I think the trans thing was still so new that people they said, oh, what are you getting upset about? It's a big deal, it's a nothing. They were acting as if, oh, well, sometimes I go in a newsagent and because I'm a guy and I've got long hair, somebody will call me miss, or if it's a woman, I've got short hair and somebody else. But it doesn't bother me. Why are you getting upset? I get upset, and other trans people get upset, because that's what's tortured us all our lives. So if you've made the effort to go through all the hoops and hurdles and the pain and the surgery and all the things that's involved to actually transition, and then somebody says, no, I'm not taking into account all the things you've done. I'm deciding what you are, and I'm telling you that's how I'm. Of course you're going to be annoyed.
So Mrs. Doyle can't tempt you with a cup of tea?
No.
That's where you were going with it. Do you want a cup of tea, Father? Do you want a cup
have.
of tea, Father? But then, like you just said, then you got portrayed as the villain, and then you came out to horrendous trolling and backlash online. How did that make you feel, to come out thinking you were just standing your ground, just asking for basic respect for being a transgendered woman, not getting the respect, and then you being made to be the villain? How did that feel then, to come out to be trolled like that?
Well, I'm a tough person, and I was expecting on Big Brother, obviously it could go either way. You can either be super loved or you become the arch villain. And to be honest, I don't really mind which one of those I was, as long as I left a mark. And I do think that season, I know for a fact the ratings after they got me, I was the longest person to stay in the house for the first evictee. So I was in for 2 weeks. And then when they kicked me out, they delayed my exit for so long, and that everybody else had to come out in 2s and 3s, because the run of the show was so short. So when I came out, the other thing about going in Big Brother, you are so sealed off from the world. And this might be hard for people on the outside to understand. Time moves at a different pace. And because you literally can't hear anything when you're in the house, it's almost hermetically sealed. When that door opened, they say, India Willoughby, you've been evicted, and the 2 doors slide open. It was literally like a whoosh. It was like on horror films or supernatural films, when an entity just comes in the thing, the noise, and it was just wow. So I went out. Actually, the people on the night, that was the funny thing, I got a false sense of security, because when I came out live, there was like a packed auditorium or what have you, and it was all like, yeah, India, like rounds of applause and cheers and all that sort of thing. And I thought, oh, this is great. It wasn't really until the next day when I was catching up, reading what had been going on in the paper. Oh my God. It sort of hit me. But yeah, that struck me as really interesting, actually. And this is a good point, actually, for anyone out there, wherever your walk of life is, if you've been on social media and you've had a bad experience, be it from one individual who's making your life a misery, or 1,000, at the end of the day, the social media world is completely different from the real world. Because the day after Big Brother, my mum was in London, and I thought, I'm going to treat her. We're going to go to the Ivy in Covent Garden and have a big slap up meal and what have you. And it was actually the best thing about the whole few days coming out of Big Brother. When we were walking through London, there were people leaning out the streets going, "Hi, India, you know, thought you were great on TV, blah, blah, blah." Strangers coming out. And, you know, it was all positive. It was absolutely wonderful. But at the same time, my phone was literally on fire, 100 messages a day minimum, saying, "We hate you, you're a disgrace to the LGBT world, blah, blah, blah." But all that stemmed from the fact that they all expected me to be singing from this pre-approved list of things that an LGBT person is expected to say and expected to prove. And do you know what? I just think at the end of the day, we're all individuals, aren't we? And I wouldn't expect all people with blonde hair to hold the same view, or all guys with beards, looking at no one, me. I wouldn't expect all guys with beards, you know, to be 100% in agreement on multiple topics. It's just crazy.
Beard grooming.
Yeah, beard grooming. So why is that expected of minorities? You know, whether it's trans or anything within LGBT, whether it's race even, you know, you see it now within the Black Lives Matter thing, which is a really sensitive subject. And obviously everybody supports black equality, and everyone, I would hope, all decent folk are anti racism. But then you get it clouded with, you know, there's BLM, the sentiment, as in everyone supports that. But then there's BLM, the movement, the political body that's registered as a party, who want anarchy. They want to defund the police. And how it makes it really difficult. You may have experienced this yourself. I know I have as a journalist. If you go on TV or social media and you say anything negative about BLM, the political party, straight away people would jump down before you've even got onto the subject. You're a racist, you're a thing. When actually all you're criticizing is the anarchy side of it. Yeah. I don't think most people, including black people, and there are plenty of black people. I have a friend, Calvin Robinson, who's almost the black version of what I am in the trans world. So he obviously supports Black Lives Matters, but he's very critical of this movement that has been hijacked really by people who think, oh, well, if we badge ourselves up as a really good cause, nobody can criticize us.
Do you feel like you and Caitlin were held to the same pedestal of you have to be the focal point and you have to have the answers for all of us?
Yeah, 100%. Well, I had the privilege of meeting Caitlin. I think Caitlin is great. She's a terrific role model. But again, you'll find that Caitlin, while she's accepted, she's probably, well, without doubt, you know, she's the best known trans woman in the world at the moment. And there's a lot of people who have absolutely nothing to do with the LGBT world that would still class themselves as fans of Caitlyn Jenner. And we saw her on Celebrity Big Brother, in the jungle. I keep getting it wrong. What is it? I'm a celebrity, get me out of here. I've just blown my invite there. We saw her on I'm a Celebrity, get me out of here. She was terrific and she won over a mainstream audience. But bizarrely, within the LGBT world, and specifically the trans world, Caitlyn Jenner is seen as traitor, a terrible role model, a terrible spokesperson.
Did you watch her TV show, I Am Kate?
I didn't know.
Oh.
Was it good?
So from my perspective, obviously, I've seen how TV shows are put together. We both have. Across the episodes, they forced, I think she basically hung out with 10 transgendered women who were very much, these are the rules, do not say this, do not say that. But I think with people like Caitlin and people like you just wanted to be a woman. You don't want to be a spokesperson for the cause. You just want to be yourself. And I think that's why you both got put up on a pedestal, but then you were yanked back down because they like to do that to people like you, don't they?
Yeah, they absolutely do. And you can't win. You cannot win, because if I stand up for myself and I'm just speaking my truth, or Caitlin speaks her truth, it's not the truth of somebody who's gender non-binary and is bobbing about left, right, and centre all week, or somebody who's just a cross-dresser or something like. Do you know, they are so divorced and removed. It's just crazy. I don't get it. I really do think that the LGBT world have made a real mess of the whole trans subject. I mean, and again, you know, this other thing that people don't like pointing out, historically, LGB as a political movement, this is, I'm not talking about individuals, were very hostile to trans people. It's only in the last 5 years that the T was officially embraced onto LGBT. But now all of a sudden history's rewritten, and you have people like Martha P. Johnson, who was at the Stonewall riots, who from her own lips says, I'm a gay guy, you know, I don't want to be a woman, I don't want to transition. But she is now being recast, almost like an Avengers film in the Marvel franchise, because the LGBT world now needs to have a trans character, you know, there at the very start to solidify this thing. But it's a complete rewrite of what it is. Now that doesn't, you know, don't get me wrong here. You know, I don't mean that people can't get on. Nearly all my guy friends are gay. We get on great, and it never sort of crops up. They're not the sort of people that live in that LGBT bubble that have, you know, gay curtains, gay carpets, gay bedspread. But these people do exist. They live and breathe it 24/7, and everything has got to have an LGBT connotation. And I think, just very quickly, I was watching this morning today, I don't know if you saw it, and they had the former Ken doll.
Oh, Rodrigo.
Rodrigo, who's transitioned, and he's now Jessica Alves. That's the name he's going by. And I worry for Jessica Alves about what's going on, because this is so difficult to talk about. There are so many people, I'm just talking generally here, not talking about necessarily Jessica. There are so many people now that get sucked into the trans world because it's tagged on to LGB, who not necessarily should be going down the transitioning route. The lines, which used to be very distinct, as in trans, you just transitioned and it had nothing to do with sexuality, those lines have been blurred so much. You're now, it's almost like a whirlpool. And I worry that people are getting sucked into that vortex, and they end up going down this route where they have permanent things done which are irreversible, and then when they're unhappy a year or so later, they come out and they say, oh, this is terrible, nobody should, some doctor should have stopped me from doing this. And then that backfires, you know, on real trans people. And I just worry, looking at Jessica's track record of surgery, whether this isn't just a case of she's exhausted literally every type of surgery she can have.
It's an addiction, isn't it? It's pretty much an addiction. Yeah,
it's an addiction, and that is a terrible thing to say. And I truly hope I'm wrong, and I hope that Jessica is really happy, and this really is the last thing that she has done. But it does worry me, and I think that's a valid thing to say, and I think a lot of people will be thinking it at the moment, and worrying that, is this just something new? You know, you've had every surgery possible as a guy, there's nothing left on the list, so you've moved on to this.
She's had ribs removed and everything, isn't she?
Crazy stuff. I think her waist went down to 12 inches.
Have you seen when people have plastic surgery where they have their the actual eyeball coloured in? What possesses you? It's
bizarre. And like, the other thing I don't get, though I know this happens, is for most of her life, she was a gay guy.
Yeah.
Now, without being too crude about it, the most important part of a gay guy's anatomy to being a gay guy isn't something you want to lose. She said on TV today that she's had the final surgery, everything, which she might at the moment. I don't know, because obviously we're just guessing here, but I'm just going on the fact that she used to be a gay guy. Obviously that part of her anatomy was really important. She no longer has that part of her anatomy. So how is life going to pan out for her?
Do you find being a trans woman that when shows like This Morning and say Loose Women discuss these topics, do you think they should always have someone from that community to voice the actual opinion instead of their assumptions?
Yeah, I think it would be a good idea. I don't think they necessarily have to always have someone, but I think it's an absolute disgrace that Loose Women have now been on the air for 21 years. They're giving themselves the big high fives and backslapping each other at the moment for diversity. And in that 2 decades, they've never had a single regular LGBT panelist. And that's not me touting for the gig. Actually, I don't want the gig because I don't think I would fit in with Loose Women as it is now. But I do think that given that LGBT people are, I think they're about 6 to 10% of the population when you include all the letters. So, if you're having 4 black hosts from 3% of the population, then surely there's got to be room for one representative from 6 to 10%. Some people will find that controversial, me saying it. But
if there's room for one more, there's always room for one more Nolan. That's what they always do.
No. Well, you can bet your bottom dollar. If one of the Nolans came out as lesbian, I'm sure they'd be on.
When you came out of the Big Brother house, you were constantly trolled about your appearance and the way you look, and it led you to go under the operating table. Do you think there was any need?
No, absolutely none.
Do you wish you hadn't done it?
I wish I hadn't done it. I wish I'd kept my old face, really. And to be honest, I was thinking about this today. I was totally ripped off because bugger all changed.
Do you think?
Yeah, I don't. Well, maybe I've just got used to it so much. But yeah, I like my old face. I didn't have any issues or hang-ups about it before going in the house, when I was in the house even. And that was going back to that time. It was when I came out of the house and the trolling went on for like 2 months. And it's surprising, even like somebody, I consider myself a tough person, worked in the media all my life, so I've got a thick skin. I thought I was immune to it. But it's surprising how that drip, drip, drip effect can chip away at you. And that's why I went away and get it done. And it's one of the reasons as well, you see all these awfully sad stories about people who do reality shows, particularly now Love Island, and contestants on those sorts of shows, that they're not necessarily coming from a media background where they've had any experience of being trolled or being attacked, for taking an opinion. That they've maybe worked in a shop or an office. So for them to come out and to face that is obviously even tougher. And that's why I think we end up with these sadly awful situations, where people go to really dark places. I know there's been another one this year with the guy from Towie, who was in the early episodes. And yeah, anyone out there who thinks that reality TV is an easy ride and you can't lose doing it, seriously, honestly, it's genuinely tough. That's not just me saying it, trying to be the big I am or something. It is really hard. If you win and the public love you in a way that's, they'll accept all your faults and everything, then it's great. But that's like literally one person per show or one person per season. All the other 15 or 16 people have a really tough time.
Do you always find, like I do, that the people doing the trolling or putting the most horrendous comments online usually have that hashtag be kind in their bio somewhere?
Oh, it's a joke, isn't it, Leigh? so hypocritical. I think, honestly, I've got this thing at the moment. Honestly, I think it's a good idea. Why don't they just make everybody put their name or photo up? Do you know?
Every single account should have an ID behind it. And I think people hiding behind a photo of Ariana Grande calling me like a fat Yeti, I'll take abuse from you if your photo was up. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
Then we can have a discussion.
See, I think you could get away with it. I know there are some good people out there, and for whatever reason, they don't want to put their photo or name up. I understand that. But for the greater good, when people are clearly dying, their lives are being made a misery by these trolls, that's got to be the priority. So I think that if you want to comment, if you want to say something, either on a subject or you want to attack an individual, I think, like in the real world, you should be made to stand by those comments. None of this hiding behind anonymity. And a lot of these people, which makes me laugh, they're all advocates of free. I demand my right to free speech. I can say what, and they're hiding behind like an egg profile with like PJ697X. What free speech is that? How are you standing up for free speech? PX.
The masks don't work.
But it's just a joke. So I think you could do it on a 2-tier level. If you want to actually participate in a conversation, have your say, make a comment, you've got to be public. You've got to have your name. You've got to have your photo. If you just want to join Twitter and scroll through and see what Piers Morgan is saying about Owen Jones, then be anonymous. Have your anonymous thing, because it's neither here or there. You're not joining in the conversation.
They should put something in where if you hand over your ID or some sort of verification, you're allowed to comment and tweet people. If you want to be anonymous, you should be just left disabled with no comment feature. What do you think?
You're right. I 100% agree with that.
So moving on, what have you been watching in lockdown then? What shows has got you through? Talk me through all of it.
Netflix. Oh my God. I just finished a show last night called Behind Her Eyes. Have you seen it?
No, what's it about?
Oh God, Leigh. I know we've been chatting prior to this, to tonight, to recording this, about some things on Netflix. And this is a newie that I'm just springing on you there. But Behind Her Eyes, it's an adaptation of a bestseller which took the literary world by storm in the last couple of years. And it's a thriller, and I watch a lot of thrillers, and I've never seen a twist like it. It is seriously good drama. I defy anyone who hasn't read, a spoiler or anything to figure out what the twist is. It's just superb.
Did you watch I Care a Lot yet?
I had a look for that last night. It's not on Netflix. They've removed it.
Really?
No. Yeah, I couldn't find it. I know what it's about though, which is it's almost a bit like the Britney situation, isn't it?
Did you watch the Britney documentary?
Oh my God, I've watched it twice.
Same as.
Oh, Britney. It's just incredible. It just shows you that when money gets involved, that all morality goes out the window, and even good people, or people who should be just naturally on your side, watching your back, out to stick up for you, can turn because of money being involved. I honestly don't know how they get away with it. Only in America, I'm sure. Well, I would like to think that if that happened in the UK, they would get it out. But basically, for anyone who hasn't seen it, I don't know whether you would agree with this, Leigh. My take on it was that the fact that Brittany is now under one of these conservatorship orders, which is basically a care order where a court passes all control of your life, from where you live, where you go, what you're allowed on a day-to-day basis, and your money, obviously, passes all control over that to a nominated individual. And for me, my take was that all these people are making so much money now from Brittany being under this order, that it's become a business for them. And that if Brittany was ever allowed out, and she certainly seemed compos mentis to me, that if she's ever allowed out, they lose their income. So it's in their interests. Even the lawyers that are supposedly fighting to get her out and are getting big fees, to go to court once a week and have all these arguments. The longer it goes on, the more money they earn. So it's not actually in their interests to get her out. It's like a horror film.
And she's got to pay for the lawyers on the other side as well at the exact same time. She's paying for both.
She's picking up the tab for everyone.
What do you think is going to happen when she does get out?
Well, surely first of all, surely she is going to get out.
She has to.
Do you think?
It's such a it's a worldwide thing that I don't think anyone wants to touch being in charge of Britney Spears after this. Do you?
Yeah.
Like, to be fair, the only person on earth that would stick this long in it is her dad, who wants the money.
Oh yeah, he comes across as, got to be careful what we say and all that with
allegedly
and slander and what have you. But he doesn't come across well. Let's say in the documentary, and the people who've known him and have known Brittany certainly feel that his top concern is, my daughter's going to buy me a big boat. Money. That's his number one concern. And he wasn't even in her life. This is the strange thing. It's not as if he was like a doting dad that was there, while she grew up and did everything. He was elsewhere, leading a completely different life. He only came back onto the scene when she was a superstar and she was mega rich. And somehow, again, only in America, he's ended up in control. Because I think they're actually, even though Britney is effectively a prisoner in this mansion at the moment, I think they're still actually touting and pimping stuff like perfumes and T-shirts.
It's quite telling that everyone on the documentary was against him entirely. He's 3 times bankrupt, and his own grandchildren have restraining orders out against him.
Yeah, well, I think that speaks volumes, doesn't it? I was going to say, did you think that she was compos mentis from what people were saying, and that she now was in a place where she could control her life, that she was sensible, she was sane?
I watched that I Care a Lot documentary, and the whole conservatorship could be done behind her back without her knowing, through the doctor.
Yeah.
And I think what she had, which was postnatal depression, because she had 2 kids back to back, plus a divorce on top of that, plus she was being harassed nonstop to the point where she had to flee the scene with a baby on her lap in a car. All sounds terrible, but it's all completely understandable. And people seem to forget that they did the same thing to Diana 20 years ago before that happened.
Yeah.
And we've all forgotten that happened, and they were quite willing to drive her to that point. But I don't understand how a 3 times bankrupt man is now in charge of $1 billion perfume line, all these tours, residencies, and 13 years later, they hand over a bank account and there's only 60 million in there. That does not make sense to me, because as a Britney fan, I remember in 2000, she signed a deal with Pepsi for 75 million. I also know that she signed, was it the X Factor? That was for 13 million, and X Factor was 2012. Where's all this money gone, Jamie?
I know, like 60 million. I mean, hey, don't get me wrong. If somebody took me a suitcase or turned up with an Eddie Stobbart's lorry with 60 million in the back, happy day. But for somebody like Britney Spears, it's not that much, is it? I don't think.
Off $1 billion perfume empire. So the perfume alone makes you $1 billion. The residencies, the world tours, the CDs, T-shirts, the other crap I buy. Where's all the money gone?
I know. See, that's my fear, Leigh. I've got this awful feeling that the lawyers on both sides, I'm including the people that are supposedly looking after Britney's interest, I think they're going to spin it out so long, and that 60 is going to click down to 50 and 40 and 30. And eventually, when there's no money left, when there's nothing in it for them to keep her prisoner, that's when she gets out, when her fortune's gone.
What do you think she's going to do when she gets out? Do you think she's going to go on a full tirade on Oprah, or do you think she'll do a documentary, or do you think, because it's going to happen one way or another?
Yeah, I think she'll do a documentary. But again, knowing America, you know, they're probably going to come up with some sort of court order saying, well, you can have your freedom on condition you never speak badly about such and such. But what I think is really interesting, and I do love a good conspiracy story as well, and this isn't really a conspiracy story, but it's sort of hidden meanings and what have you. I think if you actually go on Instagram and follow Britney Spears' account at the moment, there seems to be a lot of coded messages. Check it out. Check it out. See what you see. But you say maybe they're now thinking, well, actually, in the light of this documentary, this is actually, I'm talking about the people who are milking her dry. They're thinking, do you know what? Why don't we just capitalize on it, on this captive thing, and play along with it? These people have no morals.
What was your standout moment in the documentary which really made you go, what the hell?
I think it was, I'll tell you what it was, actually. I was so disgusted. Well, it was two bits, actually. The first was the photographer, the Mexican guy who was following around saying, oh yeah, I had a great relationship with Britney. We were good for each other. You know, she got a picture in the paper and I got some money from selling the pictures. But she never told me that she was feeling bad about it. And then the interviewer said, no, she did. You know, we've got her on film. She said, she told you, leave me alone. And the photographer said, yeah, she did say that, but she didn't mean it. She only meant today.
She didn't mean tomorrow.
Yeah, not forever. So that, the fact that this disconnect, and he couldn't see the fact that that was just a young kid, and because she was still a young kid who just wanted to be left alone, that was really disappointing. But also Justin Bieber, what an absolute scumbag.
Justin Timberlake.
Making out. Yeah.
You said Bieber. No, Justin Timberlake. You said Bieber.
Oh, sorry. Did I? Justin Timberlake. Maybe he was there too. I don't know. But yeah, so Justin Timberlake, so disappointing. You know, to come out with that video where it was clearly like a Britney lookalike, with the insinuation in the video that Britney had cheated on him. And then the interview where on the chat show, one of the chat show hosts had said to Justin, come on, you know, all we want to know is, did you sleep with her? Did you sleep with her?
Yeah, and he went, oh yeah, right, I did it.
Yeah, that's, you know, just terrible. And then I'm just thinking of the third thing, was those creepy questions when she was literally a kid, like before the Disney Club, when she must have been about 7 or 8. And the host is saying, oh, you're a pretty girl, you know, who's your boyfriend? Have you had a kiss before, Britney? And then she did the chat show in Holland.
Yeah, it's about her breasts.
Where the guy says, yeah, tell us about your breasts. What? Just crazy.
My worst moment was when she's in the restaurant and they're she's in the corner in a booth and all the photographers are just climbing all over and she's just sat there.
Yeah.
There's no way to be,
yeah.
is it?
You see, you actually mentioned it earlier on, in the fact that, you know, all these things when Britney had her breakdown and her meltdown, and you know, we also saw, just go on a side tangent, we also saw, you know, she became the butt of all the jokes, like Family Fortunes, 5 things that Britney Spears lost. Her kids, ha 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 ha, you know, her family, ha 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 ha, her hair, ha. It was a joke. But with hindsight, you know, it's really cruel when you see that. But when you see those photographers at the restaurant swarming around her, you see the paparazzi guy who's been told, leave me alone, and he just carries on clicking and what have you. That would send anyone crazy. I mean, again, I'm not going to compare myself to Britney by any measure, but I had a weird, tiny, minuscule taste of that for a brief second, coming out of Big Brother, you know, like the biggest show on TV at the time. And for 2 weeks, that's what it was like. You know, I had nothing but negative press. When I went out, there would be people. I had the Daily Mail and all the tabloids going around my family and friends, trying to get stories on me.
Yeah.
And that's like a tiny thing. Again, if you multiply that by 1 million, which is what Britney is, Britney's still a person. She's not the Pepsi girl all the time. She's not, baby, do it one more time. She is a real person. And all those pressures, when you've got young kids, and she's got the family that she has, I totally understand why any of us might flip. I can't take anymore. Get away. Shave your hair. You're just lashing out. You want to be left alone. Just want silence.
Do you think when she shaved her head, that was an attempt to sabotage her own brand?
I do. I think she was that desperate at that point of time. I don't think it was a madness thing as it was portrayed in the magazines as, what's this lunatic doing? I think she consciously, deliberately knew exactly what she was doing. She was taking away the paparazzi's all-American girls with the long hair and the cute smile. Go away. If I haven't got that hair, if I haven't got that look, you leave me alone.
So then last week, Justin Timberlake gave an apology 20 years later. Would you accept it?
Well, I wouldn't know. Absolutely not. I don't think Britney was either.
Or Janet Jackson.
Or Janet Jackson. Or even Justin Bieber.
Justin Bieber. He's done something though. Whatever he did, it's his fault. He did it.
He's getting all the blame.
So in lockdown, I got really into cleaning, flinging bleach on everything, scrubbing the halls, scrubbing the walls, scrubbing absolutely anything. But I learned a new thing about you on Twitter, that you don't actually wash your clothes. Can you explain to everyone what you mean by that?
I do occasionally, but I spread them out. I got this tip years ago, and I know people won't believe this, but it is true. It is true, I promise you. If you buy your clothes and you wash them, they start to disintegrate. And providing you're a hygienic person, so if you have a shower every day and you wear your clothes and you come back and they're not dirty, as in they haven't got stain or anything like that, if you hang them up and just leave them to air naturally, they do actually clean themselves effectively. Obviously, if it's the middle of summer and you're wearing something and you come back and it's drenched in sweat, then you're going to have to wash it. But generally speaking, if you look after your clothes and you just hang them up, get away with it. I got so many clothes. This is the good thing. I've got so many clothes. I'm a clothes addict that I don't mind. I wear something once and then I put it in the wardrobe. I probably don't go back to it for a month minimum. So it's got plenty of time, to clean itself. But think about it. If you go out and buy something that you really like, and then you're sticking it in a hot metal drum at 40 degrees, you're chucking soap and powder, and then you're lashing it about, swinging it about for an hour, then it's not going to be the same.
I had to stop shopping in All Saints because the clothes do not wash.
Oh, you've got to be really careful with All Saints. I like All Saints.
But they don't wash, do they?
But they don't wash. No, you've got to be really careful. Nicer. I think the it tends to be the pricier stuff is, the worse it washes.
You should go on This Morning with all these tips, India.
I should.
Cleaning morning. What other things did you do in lockdown that you found yourself doing that you didn't do before?
I did watch something else on Netflix, Surviving Death. Have you seen that one?
Yeah. What's your thoughts on it?
Oh, wow. Well, I'm a convert. I thought the first and the last episodes were amazing. So Surviving Death, it's all about these people who've had what are called NEDs, which are near-death experiences and out-of-body experiences. And the first episode, it was so convincingly, all these individuals, they start off with this doctor, this woman.
In the group, isn't it?
Yeah, and she's well respected. She's not some fantasist or somebody who would be inclined to get carried away. And she'd been out canoeing, got swept away by this waterfall, went over the waterfall, ended up submerged, trapped in a canoe. She could hear her bones breaking, the sinews being twisted. But strangely, she felt no pain whatsoever. And the next moment, she was high in the sky, looking down at this very scene, and people all around her, and they actually managed to get her out. They retrieved her. Her body was blue. They started giving her a CPR, saying, come on, you can't go. And she was up away in this place that she said was lovely. You know, it was warm, and she didn't want to go, and she felt comfortable where she was. And then she said, no, I'm going to go back. And it was like a pop, and she was back in the body. They said that she'd been dead for half an hour, and she should have had, like, at the very least, basically a vegetable, you know, no brain activity whatsoever. But she made a complete recovery. And while she was in this place, she was getting all this information all at once. And one of the bits of information was that her son, who was then just like a young kid, sadly, your son is not going to lead a long life. So when she came back, she had this bit of information, and she didn't really know what to do with it. She didn't share it with anyone for years. But when it was the boy's 18th birthday, she said to him, oh, it's a relief. I'm so glad. This is such a relief. I'll tell you now, you're 18. When I died, I was told that you wouldn't live a long life. And then a couple of years later, when he was about 20, he was on this skiing trip and very sadly had a fatal accident and died. So that was great. And then the final episode, which totally blew my brains. I
haven't got to the final one yet.
Oh, can I tell you about it?
Yeah, tell me. I'll watch it tonight. You can tell me now, though.
It's about reincarnation. And it's honestly, I would say, I've watched a lot of good TV, I think, this year. I think it is the most gobsmacking 60 minutes I've seen. Again, all the people in this documentary, they're not weirdos. They are credible people with no interest in reincarnation or the supernatural or anything like that. And the most memorable account is this young boy, and he's like 3 or 4 years old, and he's drawing pictures of a battleship with a plane coming in to crash on the battleship. And his dad said, oh, why do you keep drawing this? And the boy, who's like 3 or 4, said, that's me, Daddy. You know, I'm Logan Paul. I said, who's Logan Paul? He said, that's me. That's what happened to me. So his dad didn't bother with it. And then he thought, you know what, I'm going to try and look up. And anyway, to cut a long story short, they find out this Logan Paul was an aircraft pilot who crashed into his battleship in Japan. And everything that the kid had said about his history corresponded perfectly with this person. And then this other child, which is actually probably more astounding, from an early age was telling he was sleeping. When he's asleep, he was going, action, cut, no, do again. This was him sleep talking as a 4 or 5 year old. And so they looked at him and said, what are you saying? And he said, oh, I used to be some place called Hollywood. That's my home. And he saw it on TV. That's where I used to live. And he gave a name, and it corresponded with the person who used to live in this house. So they actually he said, I had a daughter. This is him as a kid growing up. He says, I had a daughter, I had a child. I was married to this woman. And they take him to meet his daughter he's a kid. But he's meeting his daughter, having been reincarnated. And it sounds preposterous, but all the evidence and everything they say, they are very careful. You know how they vet what's gone on? These kids have had no stimulus or input or coaching or whatever. And everything they say is spot on. The last kid that I was telling you about there, he's now at an age where he's like 18, 19-year-old. And he's a bit distressed by it because he can remember this past experience wherever it comes from. Whereas when he was young, he just accepted it, and he would talk about it. Now he understands how unusual
Yeah.
it is, and you can tell it freaks him out.
So has it made you a believer?
100%. That's the good thing. The great thing about this documentary was, probably like a lot of people, nobody wants to die, do they? You know, but I think after watching this, it sounds grim TV, surviving death, but it's actually really uplifting. I would absolutely recommend it.
So with the whole out of body experience type thing like that, what have you ever had sleep paralysis?
Well, I can remember. I don't know about sleep paralysis, but I had very distinct memories of when I was a kid going to bed and actually floating out my body.
Yeah.
And absolutely, and moving around and flying around and all that sort of thing, and coming back. I don't mean flying around as a character, a superhero, or anything. Just as me, and moving around and coming back. But interestingly, this is weird that you've just brought that up, Leigh, because I've since learned is something that's called astral projection.
That's in my head. I was trying to think of the word, and I was thinking, what is that?
So that's astral projection, and apparently it's something that all of us have the ability to do, but particularly again when you're a kid and you're not weighed down by other things that you learn and stuff, you're more open to it. But funnily enough, this is weird. You know that program that I told you about at the start, Behind Her Eyes?
Yeah.
This thriller that blew my mind. And it was totally unexpected. There is an element of astral projection in that. Isn't that weird? Isn't that weird that our conversation it's all linked together?
So what's next for India? What have you got in the pipeline coming up?
Well, there might be something interesting. I'm not allowed to talk about it, but there's like a casting for that at the end of this. Actually, what date is it? February 29th is the. I'm looking to hear something on February the 29th, which could be quite interesting on Channel 4. But other than that, it's a strange thing, TV at the moment. I'll still be doing This Morning and bits and pieces and talk radio, but not many people are getting to go into TV studios and productions for all sorts of things, particularly reality or new programs are still pretty much shut down.
But speaking from your perspective, is there ever a slight thing in your head where you're slightly worried that the industry will just adapt to this new way of working and just stick with it?
100%. At the end of the day, any business, whether you're in TV or working at Greg's or whatever, all these businesses, they're run by accountants, and the bottom line is costs. And this is a really cheap way of making TV now. I mean, for the sort of work that I do as a journalist, a commentator, basically a professional big gob, historically, you would get a car sent for you, and so they would come and collect you, and then they would take you into the TV studio, and there'd be like a cup of coffee and a few nibbles, and then you would go in and there'd be a makeup lady, and then there would be a hairdresser.
You get the gossip.
Do all the gossip, and it'd be a full day out, and you'd have all the technicians and all the lights tinkering, and you would. So it was like a big. If you think how much money it costs to do that compared to just dialing somebody up like we're doing here, there's no comparison, and I think they will.
There's a fear to it, isn't it?
Yeah, I think
there's a fear.
For my sort of work, this is probably going to be how it is now.
So thanks for coming on the podcast, India.
Absolute pleasure, Leigh. Let's do LA.
Have you got anything in the pipeline that you're going to rile people up with on Twitter?
Not really, no. I'm actually going to try and be good this year. Do you know what? There's too many rent-a-gobs on Twitter that deliberately go out the way.
Nah.
That just say things for the sake of it to try and cause. I'm so bored of them. I never do that though. Whenever I say something, I do genuinely mean it. But I'm going to just try and be good.
Well, we'll have to see if that happens. Maybe in the next lifetime, in the next reincarnation.
Maybe.
Right, speak to you later.
Speak soon, Leigh. Bye.
It's Leigh, bitch. Come get the tea from me. LVB.